Welcome, everybody. Very excited for this service. Jill Johnson is a new-ish member of the Sunday Service Committee. She joined during the pandemic and has been incredibly helpful with technical support, but has also proved to be a leader in terms of coming up with themes and really was quite passionate about making sure that we address the racial tensions and issues that have now come to such the forefront of the greater public conversation. And I wanted to say that this service will be a little different. The format will have 2 times for us to go into breakout rooms to discuss a prompt. So it gives us a chance to be able to talk with each other a little bit. And then at the end of the service, we'll still use the breakout rooms for just purely social greetings. And certainly and anybody who wants to discuss the service at that point too can do it. But so we'll have 3 different breakout times during today's service. So, I'm sorry, I should have led with my own introduction. My name is Kelly Armour, and I'm the co-chair of the Sunday Services Committee. All right, Jill. Oh, I'm sorry, no, it's me that's next. So next, if you have a bell, get it. And this is one of the time in our service where we have this wonderful controlled chaos where if you're muted, unmute yourself if you have a bell, and we will all ring our bells together. With the sound of bells, we welcome stranger and friend to a time of mindfulness, and ring your bells.
37. More. Hurry up! You need the bell. Bell.
And next we have the welcoming song with Tom Schlaudecker.
Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love, we welcome you. Whoever you are, we welcome you. Wherever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love,
I
we
mean, it
welcome
might break
you.
up or something.
Whoever you are, we welcome you. Whoever you come from, we welcome you. Whomever you love. Whomever you are, we welcome you.
Thank you, Tom. Kelly, thank you for the introduction. As Kelly mentioned, my name is Jill Johnson. I'm a relatively new member of the community, but I definitely jumped in to lead the service and lead a couple of discussions here regarding some of the pertinent issues that are going on right now within our community. So just to start with some opening words and some reminders, Black Lives Matter. So one thing I want to discuss today is all lives can't matter. One thing I want to discuss today is seeing color and the somewhat insensitive tendency by us. I think our community is mostly white people, and how we need to start recognizing and identifying and seeing color. And taking this mindset of we don't see color is not good enough anymore. We need to be moving to a position where we are going to be actively anti-racist and not just not racist. So my opening words I took from a reverend, a UU minister out of Bethesda, Maryland. She says, "When we say save the rainforest, we don't mean that we cease to honor the mighty cedars or the reaching pines. We mean that one particular piece of a deeply sacred whole is more at risk than the others, and that this threat is worthy of our very bravest actions. So it is with Black lives in this country, and the message that Black lives matter is important so long as this nation effectively functions as if they do not." For the prelude, we have a wonderful video by Jackson.
1, 2, 1. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. Ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling sea. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chastening rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died. Yet with a steady beat, have not our weary feet come to the place for which our fathers sighed. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading our path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past, till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast.
Thank you for that, Jackson. I'll turn it back to Kelly for the chalice lighting.
Yes, our chalice lighting this morning is from Rosa Parks. To bring about change, you must not be afraid to take the first step. We will fail when we fail to try.
Okay, I am having just a moment of technical difficulties here. Okay, I am actually gonna back up just for a moment and see. I'm gonna kind of sound check Jackson's video again and see if I can get my audio working a little better.
One, two. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the heart.
Is that any better?
Much better.
Okay, great. I will make sure that that's set up correctly for the next one. Thank you. All right. For the Children's Bond, we have a video from the McGuire kids.
We are Unitarian Universalists, a people of open minds, loving hearts, and welcoming hands.
And then for our Bond of Union, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Sullivan.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you, Steve.
Sorry. Let's try that again. We unite ourselves together for the study and practice of morality and religion as interpreted by the growing thought and noblest lives of humanity, believing that we may thereby prove helpful one to another and promote the cause of truth, righteousness, and love in the world.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, can everybody hear me okay at the moment? Great, okay. All right, so as Kelly mentioned, the service today is gonna look a little bit different. Let me kind of introduce what I have in mind for the service today. So we're talking about Black Lives Matter, and what I want to do is I want to introduce a couple of challenges to us as a community and us as a congregation. So I'm going to introduce these challenges. I'm going to talk a little bit about what I think we need to consider and what we need to identify in our own lives. And then I'm going to send the congregation into breakout rooms. So normally we wait and we do the breakout rooms at the end of the service. But for the service today, we're going to use the breakout rooms kind of in the middle of the service, and I'm going to encourage you to have discussions within your small group regarding these two particular challenges. So just an outline, and I will elaborate a little bit more on these in a moment. The first challenge that I'm going to task you with and send you away to discuss with other members of the congregation, I'm going to ask you to think about yourselves, your friends, your family, and identify areas of subtle racism or white fragility. And I'm going to expand on that in a moment. The second challenge I'm going to ask you to consider and discuss with your small group is to think about ways to be an active anti-racist and not just a performative ally. And again, I will elaborate on what exactly I mean by that in a moment. The rules. Let me go over these rules very quickly here. So when we send you off to your breakout rooms, I would like everybody to kind of be conscious and abide by a couple of rules. So first of all, if you've already spoken, Please make sure that you're letting everybody in your breakout room have an opportunity to speak. We're going to send everybody into your breakout rooms for about 10 minutes at a time. You should be in your breakout room with about 4 or 5 different people, members of the congregation here. So make sure that everybody in your breakout room has been given an opportunity to speak if they choose to speak. Make sure that you are monitoring yourselves within your breakout room to ensure that everybody has given an opportunity to speak. Please do your best to be kind and respectful. Don't be afraid to agree to disagree. I think this is something that we in this generation need to do a better job at learning, is to be kind and respectful of other people's opinions and agree to disagree. It's okay to agree to disagree. All right, so I want to start with my first challenge. I have this little infographic here. I got this. This was sent to me by Mary Desmone. I had seen it shared on social media a couple of times, and I kind of want to spend just a little bit of time talking about white fragility and weaponized white fragility. And this is directly related to the first challenge, where I want us to consider, as a mostly white congregation, some of the things that we may have done in the past, some of the things that our family members may have done in the past, that at this point in our history is not helpful to the minority community or to people of color. So this graphic just gives us a little bit of a couple of examples. I know a couple, or an example that we've seen relatively recently was the issue between Christian Cooper and Amy Cooper in New York City. Where that was a good example of weaponized white fragility, where a white woman called the police on a black man because the black man had asked her to leash her dog. So that's an example of a non-person of color who kind of used her white privilege to attack a person of color, and it could have ended up in a much worse situation than it did. So I want to share this video. Many of us have seen this video. I know it's been discussed. I know Regis mentioned it at the service last week. I want to introduce Miss Kimberly Jones. Many of us are familiar with her and have seen at least clips of this video. This video is about 6.5 minutes long, so it's a little bit longer. And I want you to listen to her words. I want you to understand that her message is very powerful, it's very real, and it's very honest. This is a censored version of this video, so a lot of her swearing has been edited out. So if you have seen the video in the past, you may be familiar with some of the swearing. But I will tell you that it has not all been edited out. So if you are uncomfortable with this, if you are uncomfortable with this language, please feel free to mute your speakers for the next couple of minutes. If you have children around and you don't want to hear, or you don't want children to hear this language, please feel free to mute. Her energy is very intense. Her anger is very raw, but in the spirit of the fourth principle, I would encourage us to listen, to hear her words as part of a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. So give me a moment one more time to just make sure that my speakers are set up correctly. And then I will play this video here. Okay.
So I've been seeing a lot of things talking of the people making commentary. Interestingly enough, the ones I've noticed that have been making the commentary are wealthy Black people making the commentary about we should not be rioting, we should not be looting, we should not be tearing up our communities. And then there's been an argument of the other side of we should be hitting them in the pocket. We should be focusing on blackout days where we don't spend money. But, you know, I feel like we should do both. And I feel like I support both. And I'll tell you why I support both. I support both because when you have a civil unrest like this, there are three types of people in the streets. There are the protesters, there are the rioters, and there are the looters. The protesters are there because they actually care about what is happening in the community. They want to raise their voices, and they are there to protest. You have the rioters who are angry, who are anarchists, who really just want to shake up, and that's what they're going to do regardless. And then you have the looters, and the looters almost exclusively are just there to do that, to loot. Now, people are like, well, what did you gain? Well, what did you get from looting? I think that as long as we're focusing on the what, we're not focusing on the why, and that's my issue with that. As long as we're focusing on what they're doing, we're not focusing on why they're doing. And some people are like, well, those aren't people who are legitimately angry about what's happening. Those are people who just want to get stuff. Okay, well then, let's go with that. Let's say that's what it is. Let's ask ourselves why in this country in 2020, the financial gap between poor blacks and the rest of the world is at such a distance that people feel like their only hope and only opportunity to get some of the things that we flaunt and flash in front of them all the time is to walk through a broken glass window and get it. That they are so hopeless that getting that necklace, getting that TV, getting that change, getting that bed, getting that phone, whatever it is that they're going to get, is that in that moment when the riots happen and if they present an opportunity of looting, that's their only opportunity to get it. We need to be questioning that why. Why are people that poor? Why are people that broke? Why are people that food insecure, that clothing insecure, that they feel like their only shot, that they are shooting their shot by walking through a broken glass window to get what they need? And then people want to talk about, well, there's plenty of people who pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and got it on their own. Why can't they do that? Let me explain to you something about economics in America. And I'm so glad that as a child, I got an opportunity to spend time at Push where they taught me this, is that we must never forget that economics was the reason that black people were brought to this country. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Do you understand that? That's what we came to do. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Now, if I right now decided that I wanted to play Monopoly with you, and for 400 rounds of playing Monopoly, I didn't allow you to have any money, I didn't allow you to have anything on the board, I didn't allow for you to have anything. And then we played another 50 rounds of Monopoly, and everything that you gained and you earned while you were playing that round of Monopoly was taken from you. That was Tulsa, that was Rosewood. Those are places where we built black economic wealth, where we were self-sufficient, where we owned our stores, where we owned our property, and they burned them to the ground. So that's 450 years. So for 400 rounds of Monopoly, you don't get to play at all. Not only do you not get to play, you have to play on the behalf of the person that you're playing against. You have to play and make money and earn wealth for them, and then you have to turn it over to them. So then for 50 years, you finally get a little bit and you're allowed to play. And every time that they don't like the way that you're playing, or that you're catching up, or that you're doing something to be self-sufficient, they burn your game. They burn your cards. They burn your Monopoly money. And then finally at the release and the onset of that, they allow you to play and they say, okay, now you catch up. Now at this point, the only way you're going to catch up in the game is if the person shares the wealth, correct? But what if every time you share the wealth, then there's psychological warfare against you to say, oh, you're an equal opportunity hire. So if I played 400 rounds of Monopoly with you and I had to play and give you every dime that I made, and then for 50 years, every time that I played, if you didn't like what I did, you got to burn it like they did in Tulsa and like they did in Rosewood, how can you win? How can you win? You can't win. The game is fixed. So when they say, why do you burn down the community? Why do you burn down your own neighborhood? It's not ours. We don't own anything. We don't own anything. There is, Trevor Noah said it so beautifully last night. There's a social contract that we all have, that if you steal or if I steal, then the person who is the authority comes in and they fix the situation. But the person who fixes the situation is killing us. So the social contract is broken. And if the social contract is broken, why the f do I give a shit about burning the Football Hall of Fame, about burning a Target? You broke the contract when you killed us in the streets and didn't give up. You broke the contract when for 400 years we played your game and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own by our bootstraps in Tulsa and you dropped bombs on us. When we built it in Rosewood and you came in and you slaughtered us. You broke the contract, so your Target, your Hall of Fame. As far as I'm concerned, they could burn this bitch to the ground. And it still wouldn't be enough. And they are lucky that what black people are looking for is equality and not revenge.
So powerful words, a lot of anger, a lot of emotion, and these are our peers, these are our friends, these are our allies. So let me reiterate challenge 1. So the first challenge that I pose to you in your group in this community, like I said, is to think about yourselves, your friends, your family. Identify areas of subtle racism or white fragility. I want you to go to your breakout room. I want you to share your own personal experiences. Like I said, I'm expecting you to be in a room with 4 to 5 people, so in relatively small groups. And right now, I want you to focus on this particular issue of racism, subtle racism, white fragility, overt racism. Any issues like this that you have experienced that you're willing to share, please do within your group. I do challenge you to wait to talk about solutions until we're talking about challenge 2. So again, the next breakout room I'm going to send everybody to is we're going to start thinking about solutions and how to be better allies. So at this point, just identify areas of racism, share your stories, share your experiences, and let's wait to talk about solutions until we're looking at challenge 2. Don't forget the rules. So my 3 rules here, let everybody speak and be kind and respectful and don't be afraid to agree to disagree. So at this point, I am going to turn it over to Kelly to send everybody off to their breakout rooms.
All right, and we'll be in the breakout rooms for about 10 minutes.
All right, so I'm gonna ask the ushers to keep everybody muted. I have no doubt that everybody has a lot of thoughts or opinions based on the discussions that everybody just had, which is great. That's the point, that's kind of why we are doing this. I did notice, I had seen a couple chats that I wasn't able to see before we sent you guys to the breakout room, asking for a better definition of white fragility. And I'm really hoping, or part of my goal of sending everybody to the breakout room was for everybody to have this discussion. What does white fragility mean to you? And to discuss in a smaller group what white fragility means. What I've done and what I want to kind of share with everybody, give me a moment to get my screen shared again. I have put together a list of examples and scenarios that I have seen personally in my own life that I think we can probably all relate to in many ways, that I think, are good examples of either subtle racism or white fragility that we ourselves may personally have been guilty of, either in the past or our families or our friends. These are some comments that I think that I have collected This is absolutely not all inclusive. I have no doubt that within your breakout room, you have identified more. But I just want to share some of the examples that I have seen in my own life. So I have friends that when somebody says Black Lives Matter will insist on saying all lives matter. And I started with this. I think that this is true that all lives do matter. However, we are currently living in a country where Black lives do not matter. Black and people of color in general and minority groups are treated as though they are less important and their lives are less important. So I do not feel that you can say Black lives or all lives matter until Black lives matter. I have people who will say blue lives matter, protecting the police department. I know this was a big one when I was growing up. In high school, this was kind of my introduction to race, is people that just insisted, I don't see race, or our racial differences do not make us all that different. We are all human beings, which again, I think that there is good intention behind this. However, if you can't see race, then you can't see the issues that are going on in our society right now. The people of color and minorities are in fact treated differently because of their race. I know people that will insist that systematic racism does not exist. So this goes back to Kimberly Jones talking about how the history of racial inequality in America has led to this systematic racism that some people will flat out deny. Kimberly Jones also mentioned this pull yourself up by the bootstraps mentality, and that people of color have the same opportunities as white people. They simply need to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. I have people who will change the conversation and ask, what about Black on Black crime? And so again, this is kind of neglecting or dismissing the actual issues and changing the conversation to a totally different conversation that is not relevant at this time. I know people, there are many skewed statistics that people will cite in terms of Black people being arrested at higher rates than white people, which is a factor or a function of Black neighborhoods being policed more regularly or more vigorously than white neighborhoods, and Black people being arrested for crimes that white people are not arrested for. So it's a skewed statistic and it is not relevant for the conversation at the time. People who will say, I support people of color if they will protest peacefully. Again, referring back to Kimberly Jones's video, and very similar comments, rioting and looting erase the message of the peaceful protesters, which I do not agree with either. Or people saying that people of color should protest a certain way, I think is also an example of subtle racism or white fragility. So I do think that we could probably pick any one of these bullets and have an entire service on any of these bullets, but my goal today is to kind of start the conversation, start to identify areas within our own lives that we need to work on, and then move forward from there. And if we schedule more services in the future to talk about any of these specific issues, I think that would be great. Great discussions for us to have as a community. But my goal with this service today is to kind of start having these conversations within our group. Okay, so let me introduce the next challenge. Oops. Let me get my screen shared again. Okay, so what I want to challenge you for the second challenge is to start thinking of solutions and start thinking of how we as a community and as a congregation can start to be the graphic on the left, or I'm sorry, on the right of the screen here is discussing authentic allyship. So how do we be authentic allies? How do we be true and genuine to this cause? How do we continue to keep pushing this forward? How do we continue to have the discussion? So the graphic on the left is talking about performative allyship. So people who say they're allies, or people who maybe want to be allies, but are not necessarily all the way there. They're not necessarily doing the right things or saying the right things yet, but maybe they just need a little bit of work in order to get to a state where we can be authentic allies, and we can start discussing these kinds of things and looking for ways that we as a community can be authentic allies to the minority communities, the people of color, the Black Lives Matter movement. So I have another video that I want to share. This one is also very powerful. This is a poem. This is by Maya Angelou. It's called "We Wear the Mask." And I think she does a great job of discussing some of the frustration of the minority community. So I'm gonna let her use her own voice and read this poem to us.
I have New York City. She's a maid. She has 2 shopping bags. When the bus stops abruptly, she laughs. If the bus stops slowly, she laughs. If the bus picks up someone, she laughs. If the bus misses someone, she So I watched her for about 9 months. I thought, Now, if you don't know black features, you may think she's laughing. But she wasn't laughing. She was simply extending her lips and making a sound. I said, oh, I see. That's that survival apparatus. Now, let me write about that to honor this woman who helps us to survive. By her very survival, Miss Rosie, through your destruction I stand up. So I used the poem with Mr. Paul Laurence Dunbar's poem, Masks, and my own poem for old black men. Mr. Dunbar wrote Masks in 1892. We wear the mask that grins and lies. It shades our cheeks and hides our eyes. This debt we pay to human guile. With torn and bleeding heart, we smile and mouth with myriad subtleties. Why should the world be overwise in counting all our tears and sighs? Nay, let them only see us while we wear the mask. We smile, but oh my God, our tears to thee from tortured souls arise. And we sing, hey, baby, we sing, hey, oh, the clay is vile beneath our feet and long the mile. But let the world think otherwise. We wear the mask. When I think about myself, I almost laugh myself to death. My life has been one great big joke, a dance that's walked, a song was spoke. I laugh so hard, I almost choke when I think about myself. 70 years in these folks' world. The child I works for calls me girl. I say, yes, ma'am, for working's sake. I'm too proud to bend and too poor to break. So I laugh until my stomach ache when I think about myself. My folks can make me split my side. I laugh so hard, I nearly died. The tales they tell sound just like lying. They grow the fruit but eat the rind. I laugh until I start to cry when I think about myself and my folks and the little children. My fathers sit on benches. Their flesh count every plank. The slats leave dents of darkness deep in their withered flank, and they nod like broken candles, all waxed and burnt profound. They say, but sugar, it was our submission that made your world go round. There in those pleated faces I see the auction block, the chains and slavery's coffles, the whip and lash and stock. My father's speaking voices that shred my fact and sound. They say, but sugar, it was our submission, and that made your world go round. They laughed to shield their crying. They shuffled through their dreams. They stepped and fetched a country and wrote the blues in screams. I understand their meaning. It could and did derive from living on the ledge of death. They kept my race alive by wearing the mask.
So for challenge number 2, I'm gonna once again send you back to your breakout rooms, and I want you to discuss with your small group ways to be active anti-racists and not just a performative ally. So again, if I'm not clearly defining these terms, I challenge you or I encourage you to discuss these terms within your group first. And when we come back, I will give you some examples that I have identified within my own life on how to be actively anti-racist and not just a performative ally. So I will clarify these terms, but I want to start with the challenge of sending you to your breakout rooms to kind of, as a group, clarify what these terms mean to you individually and to your small groups. So again, don't forget the rules. Let everybody speak. Don't be afraid to agree to disagree. And go discuss ways of being an active ally. So Kelly, if you can send everybody away, I'd appreciate it. Okay, so once again, I have no doubt that everybody has a lot of strong feelings right now, which is great. That's the point of this. That's why I wanted to do this service. So we are going to do social breakout rooms at the end, so any continued discussion can continue in the breakout rooms after, which is great. And we're hoping to continue this conversation in future groups, small groups, and in future services. So just to kind of summarize some of the ways that I have identified, again, this is not an all-inclusive list. I hope that you within your breakout rooms have identified other ways that we can learn and do better and be active anti-racist and authentic allies. So I think it's hugely important that we as a community begin to educate ourselves. This is something that we have struggled with. We have literally missed large chunks of history that we have not been taught because of our white upbringing and our white privilege. And I think it's hugely important that we take this opportunity to really begin to educate ourselves, whatever that means. I also think it's hugely important that we start to be active allies and we start to hold our peers accountable. So when we hear our peers saying things like all lives matter or blue lives matter, we need to be stepping up and starting these hard conversations within our families and within our peer groups. We need to start acknowledging our roles as allies. We need to figure out what our friends and our people of color in our lives need from us and acknowledge our roles. And we need to make sure that we are listening and not trying to take over or dominate the conversations. We need to start being active anti-racists. And again, there are many, many things that we can do to be active anti-racists to help move this conversation forward and to continue these kinds of discussions. And hopefully within your breakout room, you've identified some of these. And we need to vote. We need to vote our beliefs. We need to make sure that we're identifying the candidates that best represent our beliefs and vote accordingly so that we can start seeing some actual change with these particular issues. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jackson for the meditation music, and we will continue into our closing
Yes.
words.
And before, just to insert, before Christine will let you introduce the meditation time.
Okay, so during the meditation, please everyone feel free to put how you're feeling in the chat box, how you're feeling today. Remember everybody not to respond directly to what anyone else has put there. Just speak for yourself. This is a time for us just to honor and bear witness to each other's feelings. And then at the end of Jackson's meditation music, I'll do a brief summary. Thanks.
Oh, I gotta go. Hold on, I gotta play. Hold on, shh. I'm live on the thing. Blackbirds sing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to arise. Blackbirds sing in the dead of night. Take these sunken eyes and learn to see. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to be free. Blackbird fly, blackbird fly, into the light of a dark black night. Blackbirds sing in the dead of night. Take these broken wings and learn to fly. All your life, you were only waiting for this moment to arise.
Thank you, Jackson. Okay, so I'm going to do my best just to summarize what we have so far. There's an announcement on there that I'm hoping someone else is going to talk about, which is a meeting on Thursday night with Joan Sabatino. So I'm going to let somebody else talk about that, whoever put that up at the end. For people who are interested in learning more about white fragility, there is a book by Robin DiAngelo that someone put up with that same title, if you're interested in that. And then some things about the service, just that people are grateful that this is being discussed, grateful to have a forum where people's different opinions can be heard. And there's also, we also have some sense of being tired and wondering if it's worth continuing remaining part of this and feeling weary of it. So I think the gist of what everyone is saying is that they're grateful for the conversation and for the opportunity to learn more, but also to be respectful that it's a difficult conversation, and being respectful of everyone's opinions and learning curve maybe, and just hanging in there together. So thanks, and thank you, Jackson, for the music.
So for my closing words, I've chosen a passage from a woman named Bethany Packnett. She gave a lecture in 2018. She's a social justice advocate, and I've chosen some of her words to close with. She says, "You can't be prejudiced, racist, sexist, or homophobic. After all, you belong to this faith. You do not carry pitchforks and march with the Charlottesville gang. You don't vote for Trump, and you started the Women's March chapter in your city. You are a good person with good intentions. You love everyone, and your tax returns prove it. But I challenge you, I charge you. If here is where you're tuned out, this is precisely and exactly the time to tune in. Do you love people of color, or do you tolerate us as long as we aren't too disruptive of your agenda? Do you love LGBTQ people, or do you only love the cis white male ones and forget about the L, the B, the T, and the Q, especially the ones of color in your fight? Do you reflect the culture of your congregation in your leadership, or do you check boxes and fill quotas? It's not enough just to not be racist. We must expect ourselves to be actively anti-racist." Kelly, I will turn it over to you for extinguishing the chalice and ringing the bells.
So if you have come to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you recognize that your liberation and mine are bound up together, we can walk together. These words are by Lila Watson. And you can unmute yourself, and if you have a bell, and we're going to close the service with the bell ringing, and then we'll immediately go to the postlude by Jackson.
Days when hope unborn
All right, so that wraps up our service today. Kelly's going to send everybody to breakout rooms for a little virtual social time, and I hope to see everybody next week. Kelly, if you have any closing remarks, please share.
No, thank you so much. And we'll have 10 minutes social time for all who want to stick around. All right. All right. Thank you, everybody. And Lee Costis will be our speaker next week, and Al Richardson will be our coordinator. Thank you for all the ushers, and thanks to Jill for pulling this service together.